Okay, everybody, I guess we'll get started here. Hopefully we'll get a couple more people on. We'll start. We've got a nice group here today. Excuse me, small group. So we'll get some good conversation in amongst presentations. Let's just real quick start. We'll just go around the virtual room here. I think pretty much everybody knows each other already, but we'll just do some quick introductions and who organization you're with and maybe a little bit about your interest. I'll start on my screen with Laura.
Morning, everyone. I think I know everybody on the call pretty well. So I'm Laura Bailey, Natural Resources Educator with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Yates County. Cover a variety of natural resource topics, including forestry and tree health, terrestrial and aquatic invasive species, harmful algal blooms, and other water quality activities, and work with KLA. And I'll go over, later on in the presentation in a little more detail, some of the different activities that CCE and KLA work on together.
Thanks, Laura. And I'm next in the little squares. I'm David Carr. I'm with the Finger Lakes Institute and Finger Lakes PRISM. I'm going to do some presenting today, and some others will be presenting as well. We're pretty excited about this workshop, so thank you all for coming. Sam, you're up.
Everybody, I also know many of you. Of course, my name is Sam Beck-Anderson. I think I heard some reverb. I am the Aquatic Invasive Species Program Manager at the Finger Lakes PRISM at the Finger Lakes Institute, focusing on, I've been running the Watercraft Steward program for a number of years. This year, I'll be helping run our water chestnut field team, as well as our macrophyte survey citizen science program.
Thanks, Sam. Mark Morris, you're next.
Hi, Mark Morris from Keuka Lake. I've been on the Keuka Lake board and working on a lot of things. I'm working on the Keuka Seneca 9-element plan executive team. I'm also the vice president of the Finger Lakes Regional Watershed Alliance.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Mike Kasten.
Hi, I'm Mike Kasten. I work at the Finger Lakes Institute with Dave, and I help out Dave.
Thanks, Mike. And he's invaluable, folks. Hilary, you're next.
Everyone, thanks for having me, Dave. I'm Hilary Mosher. I am the coordinator for the Finger Lakes Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management here at the Finger Lakes Institute. We're the invasive species program that's housed here at 601 South Main Street, best building on campus. And I think I know everyone here, and I'm really appreciative to be able to sit with you all and hear how things are going with Keuka Lake in terms of invasive species.
Thanks, Hilary. And Lisa, you're up next.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Kleckner. I'm the director of the Finger Lakes Institute and involved in all the programs that everyone's talking about. So thanks for meeting with us today, and I look forward to hearing more about invasives in Keuka Lake.
Thanks, Lisa. Dieter, you're next.
I'm Dieter Bush. I'm a member of the KLA, and I'm retired from the Fish and Wildlife Service. I am very interested in the use of an ecosystem-based approach in managing aquatic resources.
Fantastic. Dennis Carlson, you'll be next.
Yes, Dennis Carlson, Keuka Lake Association, past president. I'm joining the meeting today out of sheer interest to just make sure we stay on top of and I stay abreast of what's happening. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, glad you're here. That's good. Love to hear that. Ethan Hall is next. Ethan says he's in the message, he's got no audio video, but he's from Yates County Soil and Water. Well, thank you, Ethan, for being here and listening in anyway. That's perfect. Maria Hudson.
Maria. There we are. Hi. Maria Hudson here. I am Vice President of the Keuka Lake Association and Chair of the Water Quality Committee, and working on Starry Stonewort, other aquatic invasive species, the HABs program. We do a lot of water quality testing in the streams and in the lake itself. So happy to be here. Happy to be working with Laura. And we're just very grateful to Hilary and Finger Lakes PRISM for granting us $10,000 to do DASH on a Starry Stonewort project. So we're getting geared up to do that, and just glad to be everybody collaborating like this. This is awesome.
Thank you, Maria. This is great. We're excited everybody's here. This is we're really looking forward to this workshop. We think it's going to be really cool. So I think here's an embarrassing thing I neglected to say. I manage the Starry Stonewort Collaborative for the Finger Lakes Institute. So that's why I met some of you over initially. So I'm going to go. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to share my screen now, and let's see here. Everybody can see that. This. Get into it here. So we came up with a name for this workshop, Assessing AIS Concerns for the Keuka Lake Association. Real quick, if I can, there we go. A quick agenda. We just kind of did the first piece. I'm going to run through just a few slides and just kind of a general framework of what we came up with a little bit of Laura's help, maybe about how we're framing this workshop, so we know kind of what we're doing, where we're headed. Then we're going to talk a little bit about, just so everybody gets their brains going here this morning, about aquatic invasive species in the Finger Lakes. Do some basic overview things for that. We're going to talk about some of the Finger Lakes PRISM programs across the Finger Lakes. Kate and Sam are going to talk about their programs. It's all wonderful information about the programs they head up. And then Laura's going to talk for a few minutes, kind of looking at, as she said, KLA projects, where you guys are coming from, how you're looking at invasive species, and so on. Then we're going to wrap up today's session with a little bit on education outreach. Nadia will be joining us later. She's our education coordinator. She's going to talk about education in the watershed. And then we're going to talk about how we're going to give you guys some homework to do towards next Tuesday on the 18th. But we'll get into that when we get there. So a little background, real quick. You guys, I think you all know who we are. Finger Lakes Institute at Hobart, William Smith in Geneva. We promote environmental research and education for the Finger Lakes and beyond. At this point, a number of program areas, research, education, and so on. Hosted within the Finger Lakes Institute is Finger Lakes PRISM. PRISM stands for Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management. It's a mouthful, but it's a great relationship. We're all in the same office together and compare notes and things. It's a really good group. And as the name would imply, we form partnerships with any number of different organizations and individuals to do whatever we can collectively to reduce and fight invasive species. Spread, introduction. We do a lot of education efforts, teach people, citizen scientists, how to do, surveys and reporting and a variety of things. And I don't have a little paragraph here from Laura, but I got her logo at the top. Cornell County's, Cornell Cooperative Extension, Yates County is helping us on this. So I've been talking to Laura quite a bit and putting this workshop together. So thank you to you. Real quick, just the PRISM thing is interesting. There's 8 PRISMs across New York State. Finger Lakes PRISM is here on the right, highlighted. I think we have 18 counties. I think that's right. And that's kind of our region of interest, if you will, so all the Finger Lakes, and we do a lot of really cool programs and things, and all the PRISMs do some really great variations on a theme of different ways to fight invasive species across the state. It's neat. It's a real neat structure. Okay, getting in the workshop. I'm going to run down some like 5 little objectives for the workshop. It's not just for today, but today and next week, Tuesday the 18th. Hopefully you can join us for that, because that's where we get into the real nuts and bolts of things. We want to identify program strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. It's often referred as a SWOT model or a SWOT analysis. So we're going to do a little bit of that as it relates to aquatic invasive species. We also want to help you guys look at, develop or identify tools necessary for having successful programs in assessing and managing invasive species. And some of the stuff you folks are already doing, which is fantastic. I know you've got some real great programs you're looking at. But we're going to work through this stuff and hopefully help out as best we can, keep you on a good track here. Looking at key resources and stakeholders, we found it's really important to be able to identify those up front, know what you're working with, what you have to deal with. I also read recently a professional journal article about treating stakeholders as variables, which is a really interesting concept. But we'll get into that probably next week. Get a plan together. It's always good to have a plan, a roadmap, if you will, to move forward to successfully manage AIS. And then we want to develop a plan to highlight the accomplishments. So that's, you have some, so you do your dash work and it's really positive. It's good. You want to get that out there. You want to report it both for scientific reasons, but also to get out there for the community stakeholders to understand what you're doing. It's important. It's cutting edge stuff. If it's successful, we want everybody to know about that. So there's different ways to do that, to highlight accomplishments and report what you've done. And then this is an often used standard diagram. This is the Iceberg Analogy. I just kind of threw this together. Hilary had a good idea and I threw this together. The Iceberg Analogy, if you haven't ever seen it, iceberg science tells us, and the top part everybody sees is much smaller than what's underneath, which is hidden. And so I threw this up here, and I just, you can use this analogy for not only organizational management, but program management and the project management, the relationship between the two, between the organization and the project. So I just kind of threw this up yesterday. So you're managing Starry Stonewort best you can, doing a great job. That maybe the stakeholders see that, the community sees that, partners see that. So that's fantastic. KLA is doing great work, right? But underneath it all, there's all this other stuff that you folks probably are keenly aware of at this point. There's time to deal with, constraints, hurdles, variables. What capabilities do you have at hand? Looking for funding, who are your stakeholders, on and on and on, looking for resources and so on. So keep this in mind. There's a lot going here. It's when you're in the midst of it, maybe it's sometimes hard to see the forest for the trees, but remember that people looking outside or even your closest partners and things may not realize that all this stuff is happening underneath. And then from within your organization, it's a good idea for you to keep in mind, your face is what people can see, if you will, but all this stuff, you got to work on all these things. And there's probably many more here that I listed. Laura, do you have any other things to add at this point?
No, Dave, I think you covered it really well. And I really like that you pointed out, getting the work that we do out there to the public and to other partners and to other lake associations in the Finger Lakes, because I think KLA does a fantastic job, tackling some of the issues, especially aquatic invasive species issues, and, getting that information out there to share with others and let others know, is really important. And because we've got a lot to offer, I think.
Yes, you do. You've got a lot of projects going and you've done a great job. So then this last slide for this little section, don't worry about this now. Again, this is just kind of looking forward to next week and Tuesday. This is kind of a very, again, commonly used diagram to describe a SWOT analysis. The strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Get into listing all those and looking at them. And sometimes SWOT analysis can be tremendously deep and complicated, but we're going to keep it as light as we can and cover it next week for you. So just to put this in the back of your head, so you're thinking about it. Nice. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, we're cooking here. Lots of time. Any questions? I got time for a couple questions here. At this point, we got a small group. I think we can just probably talk. We don't necessarily need put things in the chat. If you want to put something in the chat box, feel free. That's fine. Okie dokie. And let's move on here. I'm going to jump into to get people thinking about invasive species here this morning and so on. Just going to give you a quick overview of some very basics. And then we can talk about it a little bit, and then hopefully Kate will be honest to give you a lot more detail. So there's an underwater picture of our favorite friend, Starry Stonewort. Again, this is a review for a lot of us, but I think it's valuable. Okay, what are invasive species? They're non-native. They have no natural enemies. They have, let's see, they reproduce very quickly. They can adapt very well to increase their survival in harshness of conditions. So they move in and they can live practically anywhere. They affect biodiversity, right? They come in and they outcompete for habitat and food. Any of us have seen that. You see beds of Starry Stonewort, for example, in your areas. It just pushes everything out. And it pushes out a variety of native species, like you guys again probably know. Starry Stonewort pushes vegetation out, but also it's not suitable for spawning for most fish. It pushes a lot of fish out as well. Remembering again, we're both aquatic and terrestrial for this discussion, this workshop. We're talking about aquatic species. And then we'd have economic, environmental, and human health impact potential from invasive species. And this is pretty critical, as you know, and these are good things to get out to your stakeholders and your community membership to realize that, we're not just talking about we're messing up biodiversity of ecosystems. These things have serious human impacts as well, depending on what it is. Classic, fishing, right? It's in the areas of Starry Stonewort thick, fishing is not very good anymore because the fish can't hang out there. They can't spawn. They can't, fill in, do anything over there. So there's a lot of impacts. Invasion curve. This is a really important diagram. Some of you have probably seen. We use it quite a bit because it's pretty important. On the left-hand side here, we have area infested is going up. As that increases over here, control costs increase as well on the right side as time continues on the bottom, right? We want to be here, prevention, way down lower left corner. If we prevent them from coming in the first place, we're good to go, right? We want the species absent. If they do come in, so a little introduction arrow here. Now we're talking about looking at eradication if possible. And so again, the area infested is still small. Eradication might be possible depending on the invasive species. For Starry Stonewort, as you know, it's tricky. There's some evidence that maybe hand manual removal, if it's done very carefully, and you folks are going to be investigating diver-assisted suction harvesting, which is pretty exciting. There may be some potential for eradication over several seasons of that. Then we move up the chain here, and then now you're in the point we get infestations growing even more. We got containment is what's pretty much only possible at this point. And then interestingly, this is where you see my cursor. This is where public awareness typically begins, is towards the end of containment. And that's a problem, right? We want public awareness way over here in prevention. And Sam is going to talk about this later with largely with his Watercraft Steward program. But we want prevention way over here. And we want public awareness so they know don't bring it in the first place, not all the way up here where the damage has been done, so to speak. And then up in here, this is the bad stuff, right? And unfortunately, there's a lot of areas like this around the world at this point, in this country, and even the Keuka outlet maybe in this area now. It's resource protection and long-term management, because the stuff has taken hold. We really can't get rid of it. You can knock it down with mechanical harvesting. If you do, you might be able to knock it down with chemical treatment, but it's going to come back. In Starry Stonewort's situation in particular, there are other invasive species like Eurasian milfoil that can't be eradicated with chemicals and so on, but notice its control costs. It goes up and up and up depending on how big an area is. It's very expensive to do this kind of work. So this is, again, if you're down here, this is we want to be down here in prevention. That's where we want to be. And we have two mantras we use we call mantras, or, drums we beat at the PRISM, Finger Lakes PRISM. Early detection, rapid response. You may have heard us say that, you may have seen it. And what that means is, again, downwind prevention, if we can, or eradication, if we can find it quickly, early on, then maybe we can do a rapid response and take care of it. Something can happen, and we can do eradicate it, we can treat it, we can contain it, something. So this is critical. And this is a big piece we tell our citizen scientists to go out. It's why we do the citizen science programs. We want more boots on the ground, if you will, or in boats or whatever, and finding the stuff as early as possible so we can map it, make a record of it at the very least in the databases, and or actually go out and fix things if we can. And then clean, drain, dry is another one. And then this is key to Watercraft Stewards program, downwind prevention. Clean, drain, dry your boat. So we clean off the weeds, you pull the boat out of the water, the boat trailer out of the water, drain all the water out of it carefully, and dry it well before you go to the next lake. It's important. And so these are the two drums we really beat here. Any questions?
Hey, Dave, it looks like Dennis added a question to the chat. Based on the invasion curve, we are past the point of the ability to eradicate, he's asking. In response to Starry Stonewort, Dennis?
Yes.
As the experts tell me, the Starry Stonewort Collaborative, real quick, that I manage is a Great Lakes Basin program. So I enjoy talking to experts from all across the Midwest and so on. Currently, the bad news is there's no way to eradicate Starry Stonewort. There's no known way to eradicate it. There's a lot of research going on looking at chemical treatments and other things. So that's the bad news of Starry. So regardless, unfortunately, Starry Stonewort, there's no way to eradicate it unless diversity suction harvesting or manual removal in small areas. That might work. If you're a real small area, you can pull this stuff out carefully so you're not fragmenting it so it spreads across the greater area. That may work, but in most cases, Starry, you're not going to get rid of it. Again, though, as I mentioned, there are other things. If there's enough money and resources, there are other invasives that can be treated with chemicals and things that can be eradicated. But it's expensive. You're going to be careful that chemicals don't cause more damage and things like that. So am I answering your question?
Yeah. Can you elaborate more on that? Last part?
The last part?
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example. Up in a researcher up in Canada, Lake Simcoe, they had an Eurasian milfoil problem, and they used some kind of very common, sorry, the name escapes me, a very common chemical to treat. And they were able to completely eradicate their Eurasian milfoil problem. They took it all out, it was gone. But then, because now you've got disturbed sediment, which a lot of invasives love, it all filled in with Starry Stonewort. So they've got, that's Lake Simcoe is a big lake up in Canada. And they had the resource to do that eradication originally, but you can do it carefully because then Starry came in and refilled. So again, Starry's a little unique. It's a macroalgae. I'll get into that a little bit in a minute. So there's different chemicals and things and methods to treat it than the vascular plant, but there's no way to, nobody knows any way to completely eradicate Starry Stonewort at this point, regardless. Some other invasives, as I said, if you got enough money and resources, you can eradicate. We've had success with water chestnut. We've had, and this is, Kate will talk about this later. There's, we've had big volunteer efforts in bays and things we've managed to eradicate over 2 or 3 seasons. By hand pulling tons of water chestnut out.
So we are probably faced with having to adequately seek and/or provide funding for the ongoing management of the this particular invasive species or others as well, right? I mean, it's not a case where we can rest. We're gonna have to keep on funding heavily.
Yes.
I'm guessing that's what you're saying.
Yes, unfortunately, yes. And hopefully somebody doing the research. They're working, there's a group of people, and I hate to keep coming back to chemicals, but at the moment it shows the most promise for starry and other things. They're going to come up with the right formula that will actually kill the stuff. It'll knock it down significantly, but it doesn't. They're looking at ways to get that algicide down in the sediment to really take it down. So yes, unfortunately, we're going to keep fighting, and it does mean, you know, resources and funding and things.
So Laura, you're not out of a job yet.
Yeah, I think invasive species will keep me employed for the long haul.
Unfortunately, all of us. So thank you. Good question, Dennis.
Thank you.
I'm just going to move forward here and where's my notes? Talk just a little bit about what we call our three priority species. Just again, keeping us thinking about, you know, invasives and in looking at the Finger Lakes region. And Kate's going to follow me and give you more detail on some of this stuff. But Hydrilla, Hydrilla verticulata. I know you folks are largely focused on starry, but we don't want Hydrilla anywhere. It's very aggressive. It has been found in Keuka, Tompkins, Tioga, Broome, and Monroe counties. It grows down to depths of 25 feet. It looks very much like a native called Elodea. A big difference is that there's more little leaflets on the whorl, WHORLS. Whorl is that circle of leaves around the stem. And there's generally 3 of those for Elodea, and there's generally more, usually around 5 for Hydrilla. And also Hydrilla has got the little serrated leaves. You can get a piece and look at it closely. It's got the serrations on the edge, the little teeth. You can see in the upper right picture. And Elodea does not. So that's a really good way to identify it as well. And it has little tubers. They're like little mini potatoes if you do pull it up out of the sediment. And that's one of its most effective ways it spreads. They grow up underneath the sediment and pop up somewhere else. Water chestnut, we just mentioned that. This one is one of the easier ones to identify because it's in these floating rosettes that look like little bouquets, if you will. There's a lower right picture, you can see it. Somebody's got one in each hand. They float on the surface. They have glossy triangular leaves with little teeth on them. They have a long cord-like stem that goes down up to 5 meters down to the bottom, roots there, and little white flowers. Upper left picture, they have these vicious little sharp, if you've ever seen them, they're really, you don't ever want to step on one. They're super sharp little seed. I don't know the proper name, they're little seeds, and they have these spines on them which get caught in waterfowl's feathers and animals and things that just get attached to whatever that's floating along, and they spread that way. And I've heard that they can, I don't know what the actual timing is, but they can stay viable in the sediment for a very long time, which is a problem too. But we have had, this is our success story. Kate's been involved in programs that we've completely eradicated it from these small bays and things, but it required significant volunteer help. A lot of people out there in waders or in kayaks and literally pulling tons of this stuff out over like 2 or 3 summers, but managed to keep it out. So that's a success story. And then our third, you know, what we call a third priority in the region is our favorite Starry Stonewort, Nidalopsis obtusa. As you all may know, it's a macroalgae, so it looks like a vascular plant, but it's not. And that gives it a variety of new, different characteristics that vascular plants don't have, which is, I think, part of the reason it's so hard to get rid of. It forms very dense beds, and it generally grows later in the summer. It's a late growth invasive. Underwater shot there on the left is a shot I actually took a couple summers ago in your outlet, Keuka outlet. Right-hand side is a real nice identification picture from Paul Skowinski, who is a researcher out in Wisconsin. There's a nickel down here to give you an idea. It's very long and stocky. These long branchlets stick out. And I gave us two because it's our favorite here. I gave us 2 slides. It can grow pretty deep. It can be growing depths up to 9 meters deep. Generally itself, though, it's only a couple meters long. There's another picture there of, a single strand of it on the hull of a kayak, so you can see how long and skinny it is. Typically, the star-shaped bulbils are these little reproductive structures that hide down the sediment. They're not seeds, but they're star-shaped, and that's a key identifier. If you're able to find one of those, then you're absolutely, there's nothing else like it, so you know you've got Starry Stonewort. It is similar to Keuka species, which we often call muskgrass up here, and both Keuka and Starry Stonewort or macroalgae, if you squeeze their stems, they look technically not stems. You squeeze the stems, they pop. And with the muskgrass, it smells. With Kara, it smells musky, it smells skunky, garlicky, and that's a good identifier because Starry Stonewort does not. So if you squeeze it and pops and stinks, and you've got native Kara, that's a good thing. If you squeeze it and it doesn't, you may have Starry Stonewort, which is another good way to identify it. It anchors the sediment by rhizoids. Again, this is not a vascular plant, so it does not have technically officially has roots. It has these rhizoids that help it attach to the bottom. And these are my dirty fingernails here in this picture. So someday that'll be a famous picture. So I think with that, where are we at? Yep, that's it for me for now. See what time we're doing good on time. I think now Kate Monticelli is going to come on here and give you a little more detail about surveying, reporting aquatic invasive species in the Finger Lakes to fill in some of the gaps I didn't mention. Any other questions before Kate starts?
I was just going to say, I submitted another question in the chat room. I was one of Laura who was interested in updating the group quickly on our success with water chestnut. It's my impression, Laura, that our efforts that we've had in place for the last 10 years probably now, that we basically have water chestnut in control.
Yeah, I wish Ethan had audio so he could fill in on this. Maybe he can type some information into the chat box as well. But yes, Soil and Water Conservation District work with KLA and other organizations in Keuka Lake area. And they hire a gentleman who goes out on an airboat each season and pulls the water chestnut. And then there's also a couple who lives in the area where the water chestnut infestation is. And they go out with their either kayak or canoe each year and pull water chestnut as well. And the two of them bring in, quite a bit of water chestnut as well. So I think between, those repeat efforts between the gentleman that goes out in the airboat and the couple that goes out as well to get anything that he may have missed or may have come back up later in the season, really knocking the population back and keeping it from spreading. But yeah, if Ethan, if you want to add any more there in the chat box, perfect. So yeah, Ethan added that Yates Soil and Water Conservation District has been administering efforts to harvest water chestnut in Keuka Lake Outlet, as well as the Canandaigua Lake Inlet for several years, which appears to have been successful in containing the water chestnut. Thanks, Ethan.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that each year our harvest is becoming less and less and less. So we appear to be effective in what we're doing. I would just like to hear someday that for Starry Stonewort, we can be as effective. Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
yes.
yes,
It is good to, yeah, it's really good to hear, those success stories like with the water chestnut that, that repeat effort does have an impact.
Thank you, Laura.
I just have a sort of a more scientific question. Do we have any research, like hard numbers, maybe from the Midwest? Has anybody researched the effect on fisheries of the Starry Stonewort? I mean, we know that it, clog up the habitat and destroy the spawning beds. But has anybody done any hard research on that? I haven't seen any.
I have not honestly seen any hard research on it, although it's just commonly known that it's a problem. I know I was at a conference and one gentleman did say that they were looking at, it was a species of like sunfish or something, a little tiny panfish that they may be able to, do a little spawning in Starry Stonewort. But I have not seen hard research. It's just kind of, at this point, generally known that stuff is so dense that the fish don't even go in it. We can look into that. We could do it. Mike is on the line. He's listening, and he works with me, and he's done some tremendous research about research. And you could maybe Mike make a note and see if you find anything about that. We can let you know.
Yeah, I think for our stakeholders here on Keuka, there are a lot of fishermen, especially we have a lot of bass tournaments, and if we could say something like to everybody, like this could really mess up the bass population. And I know from Ethan, talking with Ethan, he's a big fisherman, that the sizes of our smallmouth are getting smaller. The sizes of the catch are getting smaller. And if we, had some kind of evidence that, aquatic invasive species were affecting that, that would be a big deal to the people on Keuka.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, Mike, we'll try and look into that for you. I was going to say something else that went out of my head. But anyway, one thing, just on the side, it's kind of related. Fishermen, I've heard that, some other invasives like Eurasian milfoil, a lot of fishermen feel that provides good cover for fish. So it's some invasives are not too bad at that, but Starry really, it doesn't. So we will look into that for you, and if there's something we can find, we'll forward it on to you.
Thank you.
Yep, Hilary also added, DEC has a strong fisheries program on Keuka Lake. They should be able to provide a report. They presented at one of our research conferences. This would be a good place to start.
Yes, that's real good. Okay, so if no more questions, I'm going to hand this over to Kate. Kate Monticelli works with us too at PRISM. I'm looking at I apologize, looking at the agenda. I may have messed up the times here, so we're working through this. I may have more time in the agenda than we need, but no matter. So Kate's going to tell us again a little bit about proper, methods of surveying and reporting for for invasive species, and then she's also then going to move into she's going to kick off the Finger Lakes PRISM program. She's going to describe some of the work that has happened through our organization. Kate, I think you can share your screen.
Ooh, yes, I should try doing that. Can you see it?
Yep, looks good to me.
Great. Yeah, when you were talking about water chestnut, I saw that Ethan was on this Zoom meeting. It's like he definitely has the experience with it, and those two locations in the Keuka outlet and the West River leading into Canandaigua Lake. When we had our water chestnut project and we had our seasonal field crew pulling water chestnut, those were definitely two of the easier sites to manage. And all I can think is it's the legacy of having partners involved in those infestations for so long. So, starting out a little broad level here, but I would imagine that everybody on this meeting knows that aquatic invasive species are important and that we do want to know where they are. And I pulled some Hydrilla specific examples just to help illustrate, why we want to know where they are and how to find them quickly. And there's an estimate of if Hydrilla were allowed to spread through the Finger Lakes from its current locations on Keuka Lake and other private ponds in the area. If it spread and remained uncontrolled, the economic cost is projected to be at $10 million or more per year. And that was a Cornell Cooperative Extension estimate. I'm not sure when it was from. But more recently, the Great Lakes Hydrilla Collaborative, their Hydrilla risk assessment put an estimate at between $70 and $500 million annually as the economic loss associated with the spread and establishment of hydrilla in the Great Lakes Basin. Which is important because we are in one of the more likely or habitat suitable areas for hydrilla, being that it is in our region, although it is also under management where every location that it is. But that risk potential is definitely there. In the southeast, there is another biotype of hydrilla. Regardless, it's past being controlled in those southern states. They spend millions of dollars annually just to mow it, to keep the biomass down so that boats can pass through channels and things like that. And that cost has to come from somewhere. Is it taxes? Is it volunteer hours? Or are we just not going to have the normal uses associated with those water bodies? And that's not really an option for us. So I wanted to have those just to help illustrate that, yeah, aquatic invasive species control and management is costly. Prevention is ideal, and I know I jumped on when Dave was showing the invasive species curve. It is the most cost-effective management strategy regarding invasive species, but not always possible. So early detection is the next best thing. We want to find any invasive species populations where they're low on that curve. The population is small, not well established, and it will take fewer resources and less time to manage than if the population were to be well established. And then doing these aquatic invasive species surveys every year, you'll be able to compare the aquatic community over time and notice if any new invasive species start to become established. The Finger Lakes are pretty large lakes, so where do you even try to look? We target our survey and control projects. We try to look at the different pathways of invasion. So how can these invasive species spread? And then this diagram is also from the Hydrilla Collaborative's risk assessment. And so these aquatic invasive species can spread, by boating. It can get stuck on boat props and travel through the water, through water flow, the trailers, the people, launch and retrieving their watercraft for recreational boating, aquaria dumps, waterfowl. Dave showed the picture of that water chestnut seed with the little recurve barbs on the spines. Those are very sticky. So waterfowl, other small mammals, dredge sediment disposal, things like that. So for our survey methods, we typically target those easy public access points to the water bodies, targeting that recreational boating pathway of invasion. There's kind of an industry standard to surveying and sampling submerged aquatic plants, and that's using a rake toss method. So that's a gardening rake, or two gardening rake heads kind of tied together with the tines facing out, attached to a rope. Throw the rake in, let it catch on plants, pull it up and see what you have. So when you're doing rake tosses to sample the submerged aquatic plants, and when you're doing that, you need to record what you're finding. So I listed some of the more important things that we try to collect, and that's the date or the time of year. For example, Starry Stonewort tends to grow later in the summer. So if you are doing a rake toss in May or June, you're not likely to see it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. It means your timing to sample that species might be off. The location, GPS coordinates are great to have. So if you have a GPS unit, awesome. If you have a smartphone, that still works too. Google Maps gives me GPS coordinates all the time. You'll also want to record what species you're observing. The water depth can be useful information, and then the density and abundance is the measure of the abundance of the plants on that rake. So it gives you an idea of how dense the plants are at that location. And then the other thing you'll want to make sure to do if you see an invasive species or something you think could be invasive is to take photos of it or collect a sample. And that'll help confirm the identification of that species. And so when you take photos, you want to make sure to show those key identifying features, the shape of the plant, the leaf shape, the leaf arrangement, if there are any flowers or reproductive structures. Those are all really helpful. Included some photos. So this rake toss method can be done from docks or the shoreline or from a boat, canoe, kayak. You can see he's holding on to the rake here. You can tie the rope to something so you don't throw the whole thing overboard. You throw the rake, making sure to extend the rope. We use a 30-foot rope, and we want to extend that as far out as we can to ensure that it reaches the lake bottom so that you can pull up the aquatic plants. And there he's pulled it up, and there's plants attached to the rake. And when I mentioned the abundance or the density of the plants on the rake before, this is, again, kind of an industry standard sort of scale. 0 is an empty rake. There's no plants on it. Trace would be a stem or two. So this picture, there's just, a couple leaves attached to the rake. Sparse would be a handful of plants. Medium would be a rake full, the tines are pretty much covered. And then dense is the entire rake head is covered in plants, and it's so heavy that it could actually be difficult to pull up out of the water. And then this is all great to collect, but if it just sits on somebody's desk, then it's not really that useful of information. So we want to definitely communicate our aquatic invasive species survey findings. One of the best ways to do that is to use IMAP invasives. All of this state uses it as a repository of invasive species observations. You can also track not detected species to show that this area was surveyed and we didn't find it, because that's also useful information. And you can also track treatments and then compare those treatments over years. So in the outlet, you could have treatment information on that water chestnut pulling. How many days did it take to pull all of the water chestnut? Did you pull all of the water chestnut? Water chestnut. When we had our water chestnut control project, we measured the biomass, and we were able to compare that over years and show that, yes, we pulled all the water chestnut and it was decreasing in weight over the years, meaning there were fewer plants. So that population was decreasing. So IMAP invasives, it's free. You can enter your data in online through a web browser or an app, and they make it very easy. And the nice part of using IMAP invasives is when you enter your information in, if there's a species of interest or a really high priority species like Hydrilla, there are automatic email alerts so that when somebody enters an observation, the appropriate people are notified very quickly. So IMAP invasives, their forms, they're going to ask who, what, when, where. you know, who's collecting the data, what did you see, when was it, where was it? And then as far as reporting, you know, maybe we didn't find very many invasive species, but we still want to say that, you know, we spent this many person hours looking for them. Or we sampled, or we took this many rake tosses, or we sampled however many acres to look for these aquatic invasive species. Dave, did you mean to mute me?
Sorry, Kate. I think that was me. I was trying to unmute myself and I think I muted you. But I thought Maria put a question in and I thought maybe this might be a good point for you to answer it if you're not going to address it, you know, in your next slide. But she was wondering about more information on how you measure the biomass that you've harvested.
Okay, yeah. So I don't think I have anything on that in our other slides, but we used, you know, mesh laundry bags. You know, you need some sort of receptacle to put the water chestnut in. And then we used water resistant, waterproof, either fish scales or luggage scales. I think we got them inexpensively, or I've seen them on Amazon for not too much money. You know, weigh the container, and we used the, you know, the collapsible barrel leaf yard waste bags. Those have held up really well for the amount of water chestnut that we've put in them. So we usually weigh the container, put the water chestnut in after it's drained some water, and then weigh it like that. And then you can always, you know, estimate it. So we weighed 5 of these, they're all around 35 pounds. We're gonna, you know, extrapolate from there and then just count how many filled containers we have.
And for like any other invasive species, have you guys used any other like metrics like cubic feet or square feet of materials harvested, or do you mostly use weight?
For water chestnut, we've mostly used weight. For things, so for our other control project, for example, Hydrilla, we're not removing that from the water column. So that's more, and we're chemically treating it. So that's more of in how many acres were treated. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Does that answer most of that question?
Yeah, yep. I think that's really helpful information. We're, you know, always trying to refine like ways to measure the amount of starry stonewort that we've harvested. And it's just so, that one is so waterlogged that it's hard to get a weight on it because you can't pick up very much and weigh very much at a time. So we're trying to, you know, figure out the best way to measure the biomass that we remove of that. As well as trying to, and we get so much other, you know, sometimes we get so many other species mixed in with it too, that it's hard to, you know, assess how much of it that we're weighing or measuring would be starry stonewort and how much of it is other species, especially when we do like the harvesting in the outlet with the mechanical harvester.
That's another area that seems to be, you know, still developing in the research side, because, you know, we've talked to some experts again, and they describe these methods. They take a small amount of it and they dry it out and they weigh it in a lab and get a little tiny, you know, dried biomass measurement and then scale that up and things. And, you know, Laura and I have talked at length about that, and, you know, we need a better method for like a lake association to do more easily. And, you know, the big question is, just like Laura said, is how long you let it drain first. There doesn't seem to be any standard out there yet. There's a standard that said, yeah, you take your, you know, 300 pounds of starry stonewort and let it drain for 2 hours and then weigh it, you know, but there isn't, that standard doesn't exist, or doesn't seem to exist yet. So more research to come on that, so stay tuned.
We didn't exactly have a standard of that either for the water chestnut. You know, leave it piled up so that it's not actively dripping with water. It's been mostly air dried. But I would say if there's no standard for it, just try to stay consistent so that your results are comparable each time you do measure. We had things like coontail mixed in with the water chestnut too, but it was a negligible amount. And where you're harvesting the starry stonewort, especially out of the outlet, I'd be interested to know if there are very many other plants growing there, or if it has most of the other plants kind of been shouldered out by the starry stonewort.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for the most part, starry stonewort dominates, but they're, mixed in here and there. There are some other, still decent patches of mostly eelgrass. It's the other species that we end up picking up with the harvester. But we try to, pinpoint the locations that the harvester needs to focus on, but certainly it's, hard to see, from the harvester, the beds of starry stonewort, especially once he goes through once and it gets cloudy. So he does a really good job of mostly pulling up starry stonewort, but there are times when we get, some pretty hefty biomass of other species mixed in there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So does he harvest?
Laura,
yeah.
Why don't you tell her how you did it last year?
Yeah, so what yeah, yep. Last year so when the harvester comes up, Dave and Mike were there to kind of see the process, but the harvester does like a pass through the outlet, down one way and back up the other way. And by that time needs to unload. So it needs to unload starry stonewort biomass each time. So it gets loaded onto a trailer, and then the trailer moves it and dumps it to an area of the parking lot at the Penyan boat launch. And it mostly gets piled to about the same height. It's usually about a pile of 3 to 4 feet high. The width of it is about the same. So that's kind of consistent, the height and the width of the pile. But, like I said, there's other species mixed in there. So we tried to get a better idea this year of, the cubic feet. We tried to measure the cubic feet. So the pile was about 3 feet high. So I went through with a meter square and used a meter square to get a better idea of the cubic meters of the pile. But then I also went through, so I did some random, I tossed like the cubic meter plot like randomly throughout some of the piles and did an assessment of the density of starry stonewort or the composition of species in that pile. So I did some random plots and I dug through like 3 feet of starry stonewort and looked at the different species that were mixed in. So I kind of used that same measurement with like the rake toss survey. So I kind of went through and said, this pile is pretty dense with starry stonewort, or there's, trace amounts of eelgrass in this meter plot. So that we kind of had a better idea of, like, we know that we pulled up, 41 cubic meters of starry stonewort, but of that, we found, about this much of other species. So that we have a better sense of what was starry stonewort out of the total biomass removed.
Yeah, that's great.
And that was the first year we actually did that kind of, otherwise it was just kind of a visual, like we were thinking, oh, maybe there's less of it now than there was before, whatever we were thinking. But so last year we actually decided to dig into it, or so to speak.
Really?
Literally, yes.
And so we'll find out this year if, we'll find out what we'll find out, I guess, this year. So.
Yeah, I guess all I can say to that is whatever method you choose, be consistent with it, and then you'll be able to compare it over years. And that's really what you're interested in, is how it's changing. So.
All right, that was a great question.
And so I think that was good timing for that question. That wraps up my how to survey portion. So I have some information on the Finger Lakes PRISM programs to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species. Do you want me to just dive right in?
Go right for it. Yep.
So from the past 5 years, 2016 through now, I'm going to show information from our water chestnut and our hydrilla control projects, and that's where we've been able to collect most of our aquatic invasive species data, was through those projects. So from 2016 through 2018, we had our water chestnut project. And so we were able to do rake tosses and other survey and look for other aquatic invasive species while we were out surveying for water chestnut. So we did do some rake tosses, or we tried to do rake tosses at all of our water chestnut sites. We recorded, just the presence of what species were there, as well as the total rake toss density. But the habitats that we were sampling were water chestnut habitats, so they were, very pretty specific to backwater, calm water, shallow, mucky sediments. So we didn't have the most systematic methods of survey, but we did rake tosses throughout these water chestnut habitats. From 2018 through 2020, and again this summer, we have the systematic point intercept sampling method or sampling design. And we're collecting, again, the presence of any species that we're seeing, as well as the total rake toss density. And we started to try to pick out what species was dominant on each rake toss. And these surveys are targeting where we think hydrilla is likely to spread or to occur. So we're doing these surveys where in water bodies where there are known infestations, so Keuka Lake, and other water bodies that are nearby that, it's that proximity to the known infestations kind of increases the chance that hydrilla could be there, as well as high recreation boat launches and marinas, again, targeting that recreational boating pathway of invasion. We also had some additional sampling, kind of opportunistic sampling around docks and along the shorelines. If there was inclement weather or seasonal staff noticed that, oh, there's a weed bed over there, there's some kind of randomized rake tosses associated with that. And also in this time period, and I can't remember exactly which year, our volunteer macrophyte survey program began. And so that we have some rake toss data from those programs. And here I have a map of everywhere we were able to sample over the course of those projects. So that is in 2016, so very much our water chestnut populations. 2017, there's fewer rake tosses, but we pulled a heck of a lot of water chestnut that summer. And then 2018, the yellow points were taken during our water chestnut project, and then the green points were taken as part of our hydrilla survey. So targeting Keuka Lake, which has known hydrilla populations. And then 2019 looks pretty similar to 2020. And this is our very systematic doing rake tosses at set distances from each other around boat launches, marinas, and those public access points to the water bodies. And then I have some distribution maps. So from the course of those control projects with our seasonal staff, these are all of the locations where we see Eurasian water milfoil and curly-leaved pondweed and starry stonewort, brittle naiad, European frogbit, it's mostly along the Lake Ontario embayments, lotus, fanwort, there's 1 point, hydrilla, and water chestnut. And so these are the points where water chestnut came up on a rake toss. And then here are, more visual observations of water chestnut as well. I have some data from our our volunteer program, the Macrophyte Survey. In 2019, 42 participants did 321 rake tosses across 19 water bodies covering 13 counties. And the curly-leaf pondweed, Eurasian water milfoil, and starry stonewort were the invasive species that they were able to detect. And it's a little hard to see, but the bright blue points show the locations of those species. And it very much corresponds with the broader rake toss data set that we have from our control projects. And then here are the points from 2020. Again, the volunteers noticed the same species with the addition of brittle naiad. They did a few more rake tosses, covered more water bodies. Just flip through the species. And I think there's, continuing enrollment. So if anybody wanted to participate or advertise the program, I think we're still accepting volunteers. Sam?
We are actually pretty tight for our beginning of the season, but I think we're still going to keep the registration open in hopes to have a second round of training halfway through the season. If we have, the interest, basically.
Yeah, for the last at least 2 seasons, we've been having our Watercraft stewards participate in the Macrophyte Survey. And I put this year, your poster that you guys created, I put that up on Keuka Lake Association's website, and I heart Keuka Lake too. So hopefully we'll get some additional volunteers around Keuka Lake besides the Watercraft stewards.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've got at least a handful of participants registered and confirmed from, I believe, every Finger Lake at this point.
Awesome.
We also, Sam, you probably looked at the numbers more recently than I have, but we've got a large number of registrations this year. Which is
huge increase from last year. I think we had it was around 40. It was the number we had last year for individual participants, not including stewards. This year we have over 100 people registered for and confirmed for the steward or the Macrophyte Survey program, not including stewards that we will be also having participate in the program.
That's awesome.
It's a lot of water to cover, so volunteers have been amazing. Oh, that's really all I had for now. Don't know if there are any questions on that, or I can let Sam. I think Sam's next.
Sure.
We can, as we're transitioning to Sam, we're right on target with our timing. We could take, if people want to take like a 5-minute break, stretch your legs, get another cup of coffee, that can happen right now before we get into Sam's, if that's an idea for people. Okay, so we'll take 5, everybody. Like I said, grab some coffee, stretch your legs, and we'll be back here at, well, 10:15. Let's say 10:15, be back here. But
all right. Well, thanks, Dave, for bringing me into the fold here. Again, my name is Sam Beck-Anderson. I'm the AIS program manager for the Finger Lakes Institute, Finger Lakes PRISM. I've run the Watercraft Steward program since 2016. And here to share, really, I know that Keuka Lake has had stewards pretty much since I've been working there working on this program. So I know that program exists, and the presence of stewards is not anything new for Keuka Lake, which is great. We've actually looked at data and seen that, there are some of the busiest launches in the region and really in the state as well. So it's great that there's been a sort of dedicated resources and attention to that program specifically. But what I really want to talk about here is share a little bit about our program, how we operate things, and really just ultimately how we try to get the most out of our Steward program. So without further ado, we'll just jump into some background here. So what are Watercraft Stewards? We position Watercraft Stewards at public and private boat launches throughout the region. There are stewards that operate really across the state, all the way up to the farthest part of northernmost part of the state to the westernmost part of the state, and down into the lower Hudson and New York City area as well. I see the stewards as having three main roles. So the first role is kind of the most obvious, most visible role, is the actual inspection of watercraft. So it's a voluntary visual and physical inspection of watercraft for invasive species. It's really sort of the first and last line of defense against the spread of invasive species, depending on which direction the boat is going. The second role is outreach and education. So during inspections and in between inspections, stewards are engaging with the public about invasive species, talking about ecology, specific invasives, and most importantly, what a boater can do to stop the spread of invasive species. So really, this is a sustainable approach at prevention, where we are trying to teach the public and sort of encourage the public to build clean, drain, and dry into their boating experience, so that they can sort of help us do our job when we're not there. So we can't be at every launch all day, every day. The strategy, a main strategy that these programs employ is trying to get people to help us out with that process, to sort of close some of those gaps when we can't be there. Finally, data collection is a really big part of the program, which you'll see in this presentation a little bit later. We'll talk about. But we collect everything from time of day and day of the week to where people are coming from, what types of invasives we're finding, what boat types people are using, uses, what people are using the launch for, et cetera. So we use a statewide database called WISPA, which again, I'll talk a little bit about in a couple of slides, but it's a statewide database aimed at standardizing data collection. So in addition to contributing to that through data collection, we also use the data internally to guide and inform management decisions on a number of different aspects for this program and for other programs at the FLI. So this is a map of our 2020 Steward program coverage. So you can see it's like Dave mentioned, we have a really big region of our PRISM geographically, and just the number of different sort of municipalities, counties, water bodies that we have to pay attention to is pretty wide ranging. This is only part of it. We cut off the bottom here, but we're all the way, up in Rochester and all the way down to Broome County. We're actually going to have a full-time watercraft steward down in Broome County, which we're really looking forward to having this season. Another thing Dave mentioned as well, and Kate also talked about the invasion curve. So, but I just wanted to talk about, specifically where stewards come into play here. So we said that, this is really a sustainable approach to prevention, and that's where stewards really become, and are where they are most effective. So stewards can't really do much for, invasive species populations up here in the, management and local control. As a steward, a plant gets way out of whack and way deeply entrenched into an ecosystem. Where they're most effective is, and most cost effective is down here, where we're really trying to prevent species from entering a water body before they become a major problem. They can also be helpful in containment. So we've talked a lot about, Hydrilla, and kind of the fact that we're trying to contain that into Keuka Lake if possible. So that's really where, stewards are the most valuable, and where, the highest impact that they can provide really is at that, early stages of an invasion. Just for an example here, we we've talked about Hydrilla a lot for obvious reasons, it being high priority and being kind of at our doorstep essentially and threatening the rest of our region. So we'll continue to talk about it. So as mentioned before, Hydrilla was found in Keuka Lake in 2011. Of course, more populations have been discovered by us and other groups in the past 5 or 6 years since then. And really, this goes to show, the responsiveness of us as an organization is sort of made an example here in our response as a steward program to Hydrilla on Keuka Lake. So starting a couple of years ago, when the first sort of second wave of Hydrilla populations were found around 2016, 2017, we have had pretty much daily coverage of Watercraft Stewards on Long Point State Park, as well as almost daily coverage at Frontenac Park in Union Springs. So Long Point is right in Aurora, right by the original population that was found in 2017, I believe, or 2016. So that's just another example of how we can, these stewards can be deployed essentially as active containment and prevention measures in the case of something like Hydrilla or some other emergent invasive species introducing itself into an ecosystem. We talked a lot about data, or we mentioned data and its importance to us earlier. So the statewide database that we use, it's consistent. This was an effort by the DEC and New York Heritage several years ago in an effort to standardize and not regulate, but make consistent data collected by watercraft stewards at boat launches across the state. So, and I believe in a lot of ways, this has been really helpful for a number of things, which again, we'll talk about. So the WISPA is what it's sort of commonly known as, is based in an Esri product. So it is GIS and GIS enabled and based in GIS programs. So it's based in a Survey 123 survey form that has been customized. It's a pretty powerful and inclusive, comprehensive data collection survey employed now by 17 programs at over 100 sites. I think they almost hit 350,000 records collected in 2020 alone by stewards across the state. And really a big part of that is in the Finger Lakes. We collect a huge amount of data. So in addition to sort of making things more comparable, data sets from one program to another, one water body to another, the ability to compare those things has been really helpful for a lot of things, and it has opened some doors here. It's also helped with data accessibility. It allows programs to share data really easily. Everything is stored on a cloud that everybody already knows sort of the ecosystem and the processes that are associated with sharing data. So all it takes is just a quick email to a program coordinator or the heritage folks that operate the database, requesting data access for one water body or one launch or an entire region, and it's made pretty easy through that. So another thing that this has really helped do is bringing groups together. So kind of through, program managers across the state have aided in guiding this and sort of informing what is the needs of programs across the state, and in that it's really helped to bring groups together and allowing to share resources and share information about their programs. So this is really getting into sort of what, how we like to get the most out of our Watercraft Steward program. On Canandaigua Lake, we've been partnering with them for a number of years, adding sort of elevated Watercraft Steward coverage through funding from the Canandaigua Lake Watershed Association and the Watershed Council. And these next 3 slides are products of a year-end report that we typically do, where we basically take the data from Canandaigua Lake and run a number of different analyses to sort of explore what we found on the lake and what we're looking at here. So this first is, these are in no particular order. It's really just examples, again, of how we get the most out of our Watercraft Steward data and Watercraft stewards in general. So here we have a couple of figures that are really looking at sort of network analyses of boat launch traffic, essentially. So we're looking at, one of the big questions that we ask is, how long was the last time you were in a water body? And where were you coming from if it was under 2 weeks? So that 2 weeks makes it sort of a high priority launch or a high risk launch. So we want to know where they're coming from so that we can identify the risk further to say, are you from a water body that has invasives that we don't? So that makes that, again, a next higher level of risk in terms of traveling and the inspection itself. So down here we have a list. On the x-axis is the last water bodies visited for Canandaigua Lake and Woodville. And then we have the grayed out areas are water bodies with AIS not present in Canandaigua. So there are a number of locations here that are, so pretty much all the inspections that we found and conducted here from these different locations where people have been in these locations in the last 2 weeks are considered, high risk and cause us to basically know that we're still using, this is still a good use of time providing elevated coverage here because of the risks that are involved, as made evident by this data here. So this is another sort of overview here. So looking at, basically some risk here, people using the same water body, yes, different water body, a higher risk, and then low risk here. Showing this as well. So again, let's see. Another look at analyses that we've done here. So really looking at boater user types. So we looked at, two different boat launches on Canandaigua Lake, looking at really what kind of people are using this water body. This is an important data an important data element to collect because it really gives us an idea of who's using the launch. So is it primarily recreationists kind of going out doing tubing, general recreation, family, things like that? Or is there a higher number of people that are using the boat launch for fishing, as portrayed by this orange color here? So we also just like to we can also compare that to other boat launches. So this is a similar breakdown of user group, including all boat launches. So really looking at what is average, what can we expect in general across our region here. So this is, Woodville is definitely for the region a little bit more typical of a user group breakdown than Canandaigua, which receives quite a bit of recreation there. Again, this allows us to get an idea of who's using the boat launches so that we can respond in kind by providing, say, extra outreach and preparing stewards to deal with more recreationists or more anglers. We can provide different outreach materials, different promo materials, different strategies at the launch for connecting with people, so on and so forth. This is another analysis that we did. This is sort of a newer analysis that we used our timekeeper data. So at the beginning of each day, stewards collect data on the number of trailers that basically indicate sort of missed inspections at the beginning and end of each day. So this is, again, sort of a newer analysis that we've done here, but really helps us dial in, scheduling. So is a launch, should we be providing steward coverage earlier at a launch, or should we provide steward coverage later at a launch? And this really helps to show that. So this shows basically the number of boats missed by day, in the morning and in the evening. So we can see that Woodville and Keuka State Park are contrasting examples of rec versus fishing launches. So this is a more recreation-based launch. This is a more fishing-based launch. So we see here that there's a much higher level of people that we're missing sort of at the end of the day. So this is, supporting a theory that perhaps we should look into providing steward coverage that lasts a little bit longer in the day, where this is a little bit more evenly tied down at Woodville. So we're maybe getting a better sort of spread in terms of who we're missing and who we're actually inspecting at the boat launch. Another thing that Watercraft, we like to do here, and instead of just looking, at a smaller picture, we also do like to apply our data and analyses to our program in general. So this is just a series of different figures that we like to look at. So previous steward contact, I think, is a great metric for success of a steward program and coverage at a launch. So if we've been, and if people have, if a larger number of people have had been in contact with a steward, that's a great sign, but it does show that there might be places where we can go. We've reached enough people at this site. This is theoretical, of course, but versus another site that might say that there's still a lot of people that haven't seen us. So these launches over here, which haven't been covered for as long or as frequently as some of these other sites, and Canandaigua Lake and Keuka Lake, I'm not as familiar with our program. So that just, again, gives credence to certain sites and sort of how they compare to other sites. This is another look at just daily coverage. So, really focusing on which day is the busiest at certain launches, and we can sort of base coverage around that as well. So another thing that we've looked at as well, going back to sort of the WISPA aspect and kind of the statewide database aspect, it allows us to share data and interact with other programs as well. So this past spring, we've been starting to look into collecting data from all programs within our region so that we can have a set database for everything, that all steward data that has been collected through WISPA in our region since it started in 2017. So that's been a really interesting process, sort of uncovering a lot of these sites that have used WISPA that, we've known these programs have existed, but now we're able to bring all of that data together so that we can have a much better look specifically at the program across our region, and just be able to compare things better, be able to analyze data more efficiently and effectively. So that's just another point that we like to talk about here. So yes, so in general, I think, that's sort of how we approach Watercraft steward data, and really how we get the most out of it. I think a lot of this is really within reach for Keuka KLA. I know Laura already does a lot of this stuff, but sort of just building this into the bigger picture and maybe involving more data sets, more data in general, and collaborating on these analyses, I think would be really helpful. So happy to answer any questions.
Sam, for Sam, for when you collected information about what kind of timeframes for when you were missing boats, did you just have the stewards count the number of trailers present when they arrived at their shift and the number of trailers that were still there when they left for the day?
Exactly. So I don't know if you saw recently, I put together a demo and a handbook for our Timekeeper app that I've shared throughout the WISPA network. If you haven't done it yet, I think it's a great way to sort of keep an eye on your stewards. It really increases your ability to track steward accountability, making sure they are where they are supposed to be on time. And also it helps to, in that is when we collect trailer data. So yes, at the beginning of each day, you go through and just count how many trailers are in the parking lot, and at the end of the day as well. And that's sort of, again, we're sort of taking that as a metric for how many people we've missed in the morning versus how many people we've missed in the evening.
All right, awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, there's a question from Maria in the chat box directed towards you. It says, do we have plans to get a water steward at Sugar Creek part-time or on busy weekends?
Maria, we didn't, as far as one of our Watercraft stewards that's employed through the Watercraft steward program through our DEC funds, I don't think so, because I think our coverage, written into that grant primarily focuses on the state park, Penyan Village, and town of Urbana. So I don't think directly through the grant that we have we'll be funding a steward for that site. But we do work with, through the grant, from time to time, we do educational outreach with the Finger Lakes Museum. So we can definitely work some more information, about Starry Stonewort, the presence of Starry Stonewort in that location, into our outreach efforts when we work with the Finger Lakes Museum. But yeah, I guess like actual coverage from there is something we'd have to discuss.
Have you had stewards there before, Laura? Do you know?
No, I don't. We've never.
Yeah. So one thing has been something we've been practicing over the past few years, and sort of building a process for scouting launches, and sort of looking at launches that we don't know, has very little, if any, steward data there. So, and we'll have, like we said, with our sort of floating positions this year, perhaps we can sort of work together to see if there's some sites. I know there are sites on Canandaigua Lake that, CLWA has expressed interest in getting a little bit information about. So maybe we can collaborate maybe on how to get somebody out there for a day or something like that, and see what goes on, and the traffic, and get an idea. It warrants a full-time steward in the future.
Speaking of Finger Lakes Museum, I'm thinking that they have, certain programs where they do kayak races and things like that. Of course, last year it was very limited. But maybe we can get one of them trained up to function as watercraft steward during those, during their events on Sugar Creek.
Yeah, so we usually, our lead watercraft steward, which is going to be, I'm going to serve kind of as like the lead watercraft steward this year through CCE. And I served through KLA last year as the lead watercraft steward. So I attended at least half of the kayaking events that Finger Lakes Museum held last year, and did educational outreach, before the start of the event. So that will continue. But yeah, as far as like the DEC launch site itself, like getting boater traffic, like who's directly launching from that site. We don't have that. And I don't think we have plans to staff a steward there for any, given amount of time. But, if that's something we can talk with Sam about, getting some more information about that site would be really, really important, especially knowing that it's, we've got Starry Stonewort just a couple 100 feet from that launch area. So I think we need to definitely look into ways to get some more data and some more coverage and education at that location.
Yeah, so Sam, you're familiar, right? That it's basically a car top launch.
I'm familiar with it. Right by the library.
Small watercraft. But I mean, I think those people are the kinds of people that go into that creek for kayaking or fishing or whatever, that would really benefit from, knowledge of clean, drain, dry and all that. And we can put signs up and all that, but it'd be really great if like we had a watercraft steward there, especially when we're doing this big project there. They're starting this big project there this year. So yeah, that would be awesome if you could direct someone down there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing at first is really just determining how much use it gets. We kind of need something to compare it to if anybody, I think, is gonna be putting a full-time steward there, or part-time even, we need to understand its use. And I think the first step to that would be, scouting it out and just observing the launch on a busy day, doing some outreach. And yeah, like I said, that's something that we've done in the past few years throughout the Finger Lakes. So potentially we could this year.
I wonder if we could do a sign up sheet like they do at the heads of trails, around, like if you're going out on a trail, you can like sign in, say, I'm going out. This is where I'm going to go. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, there are technology and products that do that kind of thing. I think something more primitive is obviously much more attainable cost-wise, but Yeah, we don't do anything like that currently, but there is, like I said, sort of technology and some products that are focused on that, really trying to get to people when we're not there, or, remote
Right.
launches that don't, logistically don't make sense to have a steward there, either for management reasons or just because it's not busy enough.
Right.
So yeah, that's a great point.
This is great discussion, and I don't want to cut it short, but I want to keep moving here because it's a beautiful day. We probably don't want to go outside for lunch. So thank you, Sam. This is great. The conversation we just had is a beautiful lead, and we've been talking this morning about kind of what's happening across the Finger Lakes region and what Finger Lakes PRISM is doing, and some of the ways to do it. Talking about better ways to do surveying and looking at our programs we've done. So now, Laura, bring it down, continue this conversation, bring it right down to KLA's involvement directly and some of the programs that you folks are working on. You're muted, Laura. There you go.
All right. So, we've had a chance to talk about a lot of different things that Keuka Lake Association and Cornell Cooperative Extension work on together, and also work with the Finger Lakes Institute, Finger Lakes PRISM, to protect Keuka Lake and water quality of Keuka Lake. So I'll go through some of the different things, starting with invasive species, since that's really the focus of this workshop. So in Keuka Lake, we have the Watercraft Steward program that Sam talked about. We also use the WISPA data reporting survey form as well. We've partnered together since 2015 to offer a Watercraft Steward program on Keuka Lake. And the first year that we started was all volunteer run. And then we received funding from New York State DEC in 2016 and have received funds through that program since. We cover 3 of the busiest launches on Keuka Lake, including the Penyon Village Boat Launch, Keuka Lake State Park, and Town of Urbana Launch. And then we work really closely with Finger Lakes PRISM to train the watercraft stewards each year in AIS identification, inspections, data collection, and interaction with watercraft stewards. This is just a quick look at some of the data that the program collected last year. So last year, at those 3 launches that I mentioned, watercraft stewards inspected 11,255 watercrafts and interacted with 28,380 people. So that's pretty impressive for 3 watercraft stewards from May to September. They've got some days that are pretty busy. We had some trouble last year, and last year this was like a record year. It's a little bit higher than our typical numbers. There were a lot of people at the launches last year. But we had trouble. We had to buy backup batteries for tablets because stewards were so busy at the launch sites that the battery on the tablets weren't holding up. And of the watercrafts that they inspected, vegetation was detected on 654 of those on 3,490 of those watercrafts. And of the vegetation that was detected, 1,314 were aquatic invasive species. So our stewards intercepted, 41.5% of the vegetation they intercepted was an aquatic invasive species. So, as Sam talked about, and Dave and Kate talked about, on the invasion curve, that early detection, the prevention of spread. So both coming into the lake and going out of Keuka Lake, we removed a lot of aquatic invasives, and especially, as we've talked a lot about Starry Stonewort, we removed, I think it was a little over 200 of those AIS that were removed by watercraft stewards were Starry Stonewort. And, obviously they were outgoing watercrafts. So, they removed potentially 200, new infestations of Starry Stonewort throughout the region. So I think that's pretty significant at preventing spread, not only into Keuka Lake, but outside of Keuka Lake as well. And then Starry Stonewort. So Starry Stonewort, we first detected in Keuka Lake outlet around 2016, Sugar Creek 2017. And then just last year, Mike went out on Sugar Creek and Keuka Lake with me to do some surveying. And we detected Starry Stonewort in Keuka Lake proper for the first time, just not too far from where Keuka Lake and Sugar Creek meet. So we've been doing harvesting of Starry Stonewort in the outlet and creek since 2017. We talked a little bit on this, but that picture on the left, there's Dave, Mike, and myself. That's kind of the pile that I described when I was talking about some of our measuring methods last year. So we go through the outlet with the mechanical harvester to remove Starry Stonewort biomass, usually, a little bit later in the season, so that we can, remove some of that biomass in an effort to prevent it from getting caught on, watercrafts, on props, motors, and then being carried further out into the outlet or into the lake. And then also being snagged by watercrafts as they are leaving the lake and then carrying it elsewhere. And we have been working really closely with the Starry Stonewort Collaborative the last few years to help gather research so that we can make some informed decisions about our management practices and control efforts of Starry Stonewort in the Keuka Lake watershed. And then we just received some funds from Finger Lakes PRISM for control efforts for dash diverse suction harvesting of Starry Stonewort for the first time in Sugar Creek and Keuka Lake this year. And then we also participate in the macrophyte survey. I think I mentioned earlier on that we have our Watercraft stewards collect this information to help detect AIS and then create that historical record of different aquatic plants present in Keuka Lake. And something else that KLA and CCE work on together is the harmful algal blooms, or the shoreline monitoring program. Keuka Lake experienced its first harmful algal bloom, or the first detected harmful algal bloom in 2017. In response to that, we formed a volunteer program and began monitoring the shoreline of Keuka Lake for harmful algal blooms in 2019. And so far for this year, we have 59 volunteers signed up to monitor 50 different zones or areas along the Keuka Lake shoreline. And we partner with Seneca Lake Pure Waters Association to use their data collection survey form. And DC has trained volunteers in HAB identification and sample collection. And then Finger Lakes Institute analyzes our HAB samples for us so that we can gather some more information about them. And then a new group that has recently formed is the Lake Friendly Living Coalition. So this Keuka Lake Association was one of the founding members. It started off as Canandaigua, Seneca, and Keuka. We all realized that we were working, each working independently to create a lake friendly living practices guide. So we decided to join forces, and that group and that effort has expanded really quickly over the last few years. It now includes 7 of the Finger Lakes, and we support some of the other lakes, in the region that aren't technically considered Finger Lakes. And we really focus on practices that residents can adopt to help minimize runoff, eliminate pollutants, capture and infiltrate runoff, and prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species. And then I just wanted to take a few minutes to recognize some of the other activities that Keuka Lake Association is involved in, including monitoring of the lake level, navigation and recreation, the 9-element plan, water quality monitoring, and then just providing educational information on a variety of other water quality related topics. And then just a shout out to some of the others, the Keuka Lake Association, Cornell Cooperative Extension, and others that work to protect Keuka Lake's watershed water quality, the Yates County Soil and Water Conservation District, Keuka Lake Watershed Improvement Cooperative, the Land Use Leadership Alliance, Keuka Lake Outlet Compact, Keuka College, Seneca Lake Pure Waters, and then DEC, US Fish and Wildlife, and then Finger Lakes PRISM, Finger Lakes Institute, and the Starry Stonewort Collaborative. And I'm sure there are many others. So Keuka Lake is really fortunate that we have such a strong team working together to address water quality and aquatic invasive species. So with that, I will hand it back over you to Dave.
That's fantastic, Laura. You guys are really busy. That's all good stuff. You're doing a great job. Any questions for Laura real quick?
I just want to give a shout out to Laura and Emily before. I mean, she is amazing. We could not be doing half of what we're doing without her. She's an excellent communicator and has helped me out so much with doing these grant applications. And so she's just amazing, and we're really grateful to have her.
Thank you, Maria.
Yes, clearly. I mean, Laura and I have had a number of phone calls and exchanged emails about a variety of different things and trying to glean information from the experts for Starry Stonewort. And she's been really easy to work with. So thank you for all you do, Laura.
Thanks for all the help.
Okay, so we'll just keep going here. I believe Nadia is on the call now. There she is. Hi, Nadia.
Hello.
Nadia Harvo. I apologize.
Harview.
Harview. She's our education coordinator. Is that proper?
Yep.
At the Finger Lakes Institute. So she does a whole bunch of different stuff, both for Finger Lakes Institute and the Finger Lakes PRISM. So today she's going to talk a little about education and its importance to lakes and watersheds.
Thanks, Dave. And thanks for organizing this great opportunity. For those of you who don't know me, I see several familiar names on this call, but I have a long history of education in the Finger Lakes region. So I've been at the FLI since 2013. And prior to that, I worked at FLCC and the Mueller Field Station on Honeyway Lake doing environmental education. And I also just recently stepped down from the Canandaigua Lake Watershed Association, where I spent 13 years doing education and outreach and citizen science. And so I know and appreciate all the hard work that you all put into KLA and the outreach activities, you know, and working with the public and the community. So definitely near and dear to my heart. You know, I do this in my professional life, but also, you know, as a personal passion, as a volunteer. So, you know, hoping to share just a little bit of insight from, you know, my experiences, wearing both hats, you know, from the FLI side of things, but also as a volunteer as well. So Dave, I'm gonna share my screen if that's okay. Did that come through?
Yep, that looks good.
Okay, all right,
There you
here we go.
Perfect.
Excellent. Okay, so as you probably know, putting together any sort of education program takes a lot of time, whether it's a small event, you know, working with an after school program or a guest speaker series, or a much larger commitment working with a school. You know, you can really save yourself a lot of time and effort by identifying your goals early on. And being a lake association, there's lots of different goals to consider. You know, some of the things that you want to think about is your goal just to inform, you know, the public about something new, a new issue, an emerging threat, a new regulation that's in place? Do you want to try and recruit new members? You know, that's a big important piece of all of this, as you guys know. Are you trying to engage people in something like citizen science, getting people actively involved? And then lastly, and there's probably more, but these are the ones that I kind of rose to the top in my thinking. You know, are you trying to promote some sort of a best practice that could be shared throughout the community, throughout the watershed, that benefits the water quality downstream and in the lake? So remembering that, you know, everything that we do on the land ends up, you know, impacting our lakes. So this really does help define who your audience is. And once you've identified your audience, then that can really help inform your outreach activities that are most appropriate, and also who your partners should be. So sometimes it can feel like you need to take on all of this yourselves, but there are lots of partners out there who could work with you on this, that maybe have models in place, programs in place that you could, you know, replicate, duplicate. You know, I feel like the Alliance is a really good resource to ask other lake associations about certain types of things. So I've sort of mentally kind of grouped the audience into two categories: the K-12 community, so working with school-age children and the schools as partners, and then also the community as well. So I'm gonna kind of talk about, oh yeah, this was a reminder for me. I put this map in here just to remind you guys that I wanted to mention the importance of focusing on the entire watershed, not just the shoreline property owners and people who are directly influencing the water, but you know, conservation practices throughout the watershed can benefit the lake as a whole. And when you think about the numbers of people who are, you know, on the shoreline versus who's in the watershed boundary, you know, that's a really good opportunity for recruitment of new members. And that's something that we found very challenging at times to deal with at CLWA, the Canandaigua Lake Watershed Association, was recruiting watershed membership beyond just the lakefront, you know, property owners. So people really needed to feel connected to the lake in many different ways and to the health of the lake. So thinking about how you can do that is important. Okay, so K-12 education, and honestly, I could go on for hours about this. So I'm just gonna say this is just a highlight because I only have 15 minutes, and I'm so happy to talk to any of you further about this after my 15 minutes is up and set up like a separate meeting or whatever. So just some highlights here to think about if you're interested in K-12 education. And I will give a plug to K-12 education because a lot of times there can be contentious issues in a community, but I think most people are willing to rally around education and children. And that is something that we've never had a problem getting people on board to support. You know, if it's focused on kids and that the good of the environment, you know, that's kind of a slam dunk in a lot of ways. So the first thing that's really important is making sure that you develop relationships with your schools. And I was trying to look up which schools besides Penn Yan and Hammondsport are in your watershed, but I'm not sure if there are others. I don't know, Laura, do you know?
Is Dundee in our watershed? Probably.
I think there might be, yeah.
What about Prattsburg? I think Prattsburg.
Parts of it, yeah. So there can be some overlap, and just thinking about which school districts are in your watershed boundary or parts of that school district that you could reach out to and work with. Schools and educators, I think everyone knows, especially this year, are really overwhelmed with their responsibilities for meeting science learning standards, but also, many, many other responsibilities that they have in education. And so getting your education partners to see this as supporting them and reaching their goals, not as an add-on, that this is something extra they have to do, is really helpful. So, having those first discussions with them, seeing where your watershed education could fit with them, how you could support it, what needs they have. Maybe they need field trip money, so that they can go do stream sampling or do a program that they're already doing. I know at one point Penn Yan was going to Mueller Field Station. I don't know if they do that anymore. But, a lot of times it does come down to funding and what kind of support the district has. And is there a way that, the association could help in that way? For example, I'm thinking of when I first started with Canandaigua Lake Watershed Association, I had reached out to them to ask them if I could volunteer for their education program. And they said, "We don't have one. Would you like to start one?" So I said, "Sure." And that program is still in place and going in 3 school districts. And that starts in pre-K and goes up through middle school. We developed different lessons that scaffolded each year and met the science standards. And the teacher for that right now is Beth Altimus. She would be a great resource if you were interested in learning more about what types of programs they have at different grade levels. And those were really developed in partnership with the teachers to meet their needs. So in 4th grade, they have the state science test, and they wanted a water cycle, review activity. And that was a great opportunity to teach about watersheds and the water cycle. So you can do classroom things, you can do field trip related activities, you can do special projects. I'm thinking like service learning type projects if you wanted to do a stream restoration. So there's lots of opportunities, and your teachers may have kind of the best, finger on the pulse of what is needed and what could fit into their school and their needs. So really it's about relationship building and meeting their needs. A lot of times these activities are viewed as enrichment for all of the students. And so that's a great way to kind of pitch this to them as well. I already talked a little bit about identifying barriers and working to eliminate those. A lot of times those are financial, but sometimes it's resources as well. And that resources could be people. It could be supplies that they need. Maybe like for this year, maybe they wanted to have like a guest speaker come in and talk about what it means to be part of a volunteer organization. You could do that in participation in government or in a civics lesson in elementary school. So just knowing that they're there, you're there for them, and they can reach out. Supporting existing programs. A lot of schools do something like a science night or a science fair. You could go and participate in that. Maybe they need judges or presenters. It could be a good place to, share your KLA information for the parents. And then lastly is to not overlook the existing programs that are out there. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, but you can help facilitate those partnerships. So, I know Laura runs a bunch of programs. We're all connected to some of the conservation field days, like regional events, Envirothon. The FLI has our stream monitoring program, Science on Seneca, water quality program on Seneca Lake, the Youth Climate Summit, which Penn Yan and Hammondsport have both participated in the past. So there's a lot of opportunities out there already that you can help kind of, you know, make those connections if people are looking for those. So that's a quick rundown on K-12 and just some ideas, but there's so much more to all of it. I'm gonna go into our community ed because I know I only have a few minutes left. So I kind of grouped community education into a couple of different categories. If you're just looking to inform the general public, oh, and lastly, I want to say back about K-12 education. If you are doing a K-12 education program, don't be afraid to send stuff home for parents about your organization and tell them that you're looking for members to help protect the lake. If you love the lake, you know, join us in protecting and sign up for our emails, things like that. So don't be shy about that. So community education, you know, sometimes these are just to inform people about new issues, emerging threats, programs that are in place. These are really good opportunities to cross-promote with different organizations like SWILE. I think a lot of you were on the municipal education series that Ian Smith and I did last year. So, you know, there are events going on and you can help cross promote that. And we, as people working in this field, always appreciate the help with outreach and getting people aware and signed up for these types of events. At CLWA, we ended up creating a Watershed guest lecture series, and we kind of set those up 3 times a year. And so it was pretty regular timing, and that way people could look forward to those events and kind of know that it was on a set schedule and would just kind of be looking for that schedule to come out. So these are great. You can also recruit for members when people sign up for that at the event as well. And it's really great to highlight the work that local experts are doing to protect the lakes in the whole region. So sometimes it's hard to get that information out, and you know, organizing a guest speaker opportunity or cross-promoting an event is excellent. Promoting best practices works really well in workshop format. So when I'm thinking of a workshop, it's more like hands-on, participatory. Sometimes they're helping create a demonstration project, or sometimes you're touring a demonstration project. But a lot of times you're working with local experts and agencies or research partners. One year I worked with Edith Davies from Ontario County Soil and Water Conservation District, and we did a rain garden project. And we had a new building that was built in a community park, and we wanted to put in a rain garden. So we had, you know, brand new, you know, landscape, and you know, we talked about rain gardens, educated the workshop participants on it, but then they helped us plant everything. So it was great. And that rain garden is still there, and they can go and see all of the excellent work that they did. And then lastly, I've found I have no scientific evidence of this, but just in my anecdotal experience of being on the Canandaigua Lake Watershed Association Board, I found that the best way to recruit members is to engage them in citizen science. And when they care about a project and are really involved in doing something active to collect data or help solve a problem, that's really empowering for the community members. Same goes for kids, you know, when they're engaged in a project that can help, you know, improve water quality, improve, you know, watershed health. You know, it makes a real difference. And those are the kinds of experiences that stick with people for a long time. They also become your ambassadors. You know, they're really proud of the work that they've done. Oftentimes they have access to experts that maybe the general public doesn't have through the training or through the partnerships. And, you know, they're able to share that information with their neighbors, their friends, their family members. But, you know, we have a lot of different types of citizen science opportunities these days. And I know Laura's really involved in these. But as far as how we've grown our membership at CLWA, it was really, I think, through citizen science that we had a lot of success in the most recent years. Prior to that, it was, you know, like issues focused. And since then, it has been really through citizen science because people really want to do something, often more than just writing a check to become a member. They want to actually be involved in something. And so our SECI program, we started a Take a Dip for the Lake program. That was our first citizen science program, and that's been really successful. We've consistently had over 20 volunteers for that for, you know, a decade and a half now since we started that program. And, you know, it doesn't cost a lot, but those people are really interested in, you know, being involved in that year to year and how that data is used. And then, you know, prior to this past year, we always did like a celebration at the end of the year, which is nice to get people together to share their stories about, you know, how they've seen the lake change or, you know, what their experiences were with that particular field season. But it's really nice to build that sense of community and camaraderie that we're all in this together and, you know, we are making a difference. So celebrating our volunteers is really important as well. So I hope that was quick enough, Dave, but I just wanted to share some highlights and here's my contact information. I am very happy to talk to anyone further, you know, above and beyond today about any types of education ideas you have, and happy to support that any way I can. So, but if we have a couple of minutes for questions, I'm happy to answer questions right now too.
Yeah, thank you, Nadia. That was fantastic. And it's just so important. That outreach and education and getting children involved is just so critical. I work with the Owasco Watershed Lake Association some as well. And we're always thrilled when somebody young, you know, wants to get involved in the program. It's just wonderful. So any questions for Nadia? Okay.
Dave, can I highlight one thing from Aula? I know that the Owasco Lake Watershed Association started like a junior chapter at the Auburn High School. And I've thought that's a really neat idea that would be great to expand for all of the lake associations to have kind of a junior chapter at the schools.
Given COVID and stuff, I'm not sure where that's at this point, but a key to that effort was a member of the Lake Association, and he stepped up and was kind of the parent guide for that group. And it was, and I may have to reinvent it again now that, you know, COVID is tough, but it was a really good group, you know, and they did some neat stuff. So it is a really good model. If we can get it going again and make that spread, that's a great idea.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Lots of things are possible after COVID. But now's the perfect time to plan. Go ahead, Maria.
I have just a really quick question. So I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I actually have done before I retired, I was a science coordinator for our board and wrote curriculum. And, you know, my background is ecology, but So what would be a starting point if Keuka Lake? Who would we approach? The principal, the counselor, the science teacher? I mean, when you started it, what did you do?
So when I started it, I probably did it the wrong way and I contacted the teachers, but that's because I already knew a lot of the teachers. But really, if you can start with the superintendent, you know, and just, you know, introduce yourselves and say that you're interested in supporting them and where are their needs, because you don't know if their needs are at the high school or maybe there's an elementary opportunity. You know, I think it would be great to kind of start with the superintendent. And unfortunately, there are varying levels of support in different buildings. And sometimes that's from the administration, sometimes it's from the teachers. Sometimes the teachers are too overwhelmed and, you know, they just can't take on one more thing. And so it does take time to find the right partners in the school district. So, you know, for example, there's one school district I work with. I've been working with their high school and their elementary school for years, but I have not been able to work with their elementary or their middle school, and it just happens that way. And you know, finding those connecting people is the most important thing, and then maybe go from there. So that's the best answer I have.
And again, my experience with Alaska, that group started before I was involved with them. But there was this one parent that stepped up and his daughter was in it. And, you know, probably now because it was 3 years ago, she's probably graduated, you know, but it helps if you got a parent, because invariably you're going to have a group like that. They're going to want to meet outside of school hours. You know, if it's a little gathering or it's pick up trash or make posters or whatever, you know, whatever it might be. And you need a safe place for it to happen. So getting a parent involved is critical, I think, or parents. Not that that's necessarily easy either. But,
yeah. If it's high school, I can help because I do work with a bunch of the high school teachers in your watershed. So, and I know who those folks are. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you, Nadia. Again, that was great information. We're going to go into our one last little thing today. And this is where we ask folks to do some homework. I'm putting a link right now in the chat box, if I do it right. In a second. And I'm going to bring it up here. I don't know if that'll work or not. We're asking everybody, and I will, because our numbers have dwindled, people have gone to other meetings and things. I'll email everybody and send this link as well there that way. Let me try and share my screen. I'm going to bring this up. What we've done is we've done a form in Google Forms, and there. And this is the information getting back all the way back to the beginning when we talked about doing the SWOT model. We need to start getting your input directly from you and the Lake Association about what is needed. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the obstacles? All those things. So we can really help. As we pointed out, our goals or our objectives at the beginning. Laying down some good paths for you to work on, where your resources are, what's a good path to you, reporting or how are you distributing your successes, all those good things. So here, we'll just go through, I won't go through all these. It's like, I don't know, came up with 15 or 16 questions. And gives many of these people respond as we can, and we'll try and put all this together and at least begin to summarize it before we have our discussion next Tuesday, the 18th. And then we'll be able to walk through this more quickly with people's opinions and thoughts. And my thinking also was, if a few of you can actually get together and meet by phone, or the weather's supposed to be better now, a little, safely, socially distance outdoors and discuss this stuff, and come up with some, thoughts that way is fine too. Or if you just want to do your own opinions. But I won't go through all these in detail, but what is the biggest threat to the lake as it relates to AIS? Resource limitations. Now we got some questions here that are, what are the key strengths of the Aquatic Invasive Species Program from your perspective? And this would be internal to the organization. And then what is the weakness internal to the organization? Then basically the same kind of thing, but external to the organization. We talked a lot about that this morning. There's so much interface with stakeholders, partners, public, citizen scientists, et cetera. And so there's all those things that impact what you do, how you do it, the organization, the projects, and move forward, and so on. So we have lots of those kinds of questions. Key threats to the AIS program. What's a negative element outside your organization? Here's an external question that may be a problem. Is it, competing for funding or other things? Who or what is missing from your program that should be added possibly? How do you measure your success? Or even just the efforts you're doing? And so on and so forth. Education and outreach, like Nadia was just talking about, how you're measuring prevention efforts, all these good things. And we're just looking for the best answers you can come up with, just your thoughts and ideas. And then we can start to tally those, if you will, and it'll help lead the discussion on Tuesday, the 18th. Where does KLA spend the majority of the time and resources looking at prevention, education, outreach, and control efforts of invasive species? These are all good questions to see how the organization's looking at things, moving forward. And again, we can organize these and it'll help lead our discussion on Tuesday next week. And if you want to, there's a link there. I just put, if you want to get into it now, you can, or you can just do it. We'll get back to it on a Tuesday. Questions, and Hilary, if you're still with us, let me speak up if I missed something.
You're good, buddy.
Thanks. Too easy.
Dave, are you able to email that link for the survey form out to everybody?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
I'll email the link to everybody. Even those that didn't make it to the meeting, we have, thanks to Zoom, we have a list of those that registered. There's a few that didn't make it. So I'll try and do a little, summary of what was covered here. We did record this today, or we are recording it, and so we'll try and post that as quickly as we can too. So if somebody wants to refer back to some of the discussion, they can. And I'll include that link in the email as well, so everybody will be on the same page, if we will. So a little homework. Next Tuesday is going to be a little hard work and discussion, but I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be very helpful and exciting.
Yeah, and Dave, I think it's important to mention that next week's program will build off the responses of this survey.
Yes.
So it's very important that you critically take the time to, think about what are the single most important things that you think of in terms of AIS. We will be doing some case studies next week. We will be doing some, word mapping based on your responses here. So next week really hinges off the responses to this survey. So it is important that, we all complete this in a timely fashion.
Yeah, so we have we need a few days to do this. So if you get this done by the weekend, or by the end of the weekend at least, it only gives us Monday. So ideally by the end of the week would be really handy to get this done. Shouldn't take you too long. Just get your best thoughts and ideas down. Any thoughts or questions? We covered a lot of bases today. We want to really lay out a good solid background of what's happening, locally for you folks at Keuka Lake and also across the Finger Lakes region as far as the fight against the aquatic invasive species and what we're doing about it, and we're all working together. But next week will be really interesting to get these responses to us and really get some good planning out there. Any other questions? All right.
Thanks a lot, Dave, and everyone else for all the information on this call.
Yes.
So I think, I'm definitely thinking of a lot of things right now, and some of our strengths, and also areas where I would love to expand on, as Maria had talked about wanting to get more involved with education outreach at the K through 12 level. That excites me some, and I think that's an area we can grow. But so I'm really looking forward to taking the time to do this survey and seeing what conversation comes next week.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura, very much for all your help and input. And thank you, everybody, for attending today. And hope to see you next week.